Imagine you spent 5 long years building this towering skyscraper right in the middle of a massive, bustling city.
Just a completely massive, exhausting project.
Exactly. And for half a decade, your entire reality has just been the scaffolding.
Right.
You know, the temporary metal platforms, the deafening roar of those yellow cranes, the intricate mesh of supports holding up all the glass and steel.
Yeah, it's loud, it's chaotic.
It's totally chaotic. It requires your constant, grueling attention. But, I mean, it feels incredibly productive, right?
Oh, absolutely. The progress is undeniable.
Yeah, you can literally point to the massive cranes and say, look at all this work I'm doing.
The scaffolding basically acts as a giant billboard for your effort.
It really does. But today the cranes pack up.
Yeah.
Trucks drive away. The scaffolding is systematically dismantled and hauled off. And suddenly, you are just left standing on the pavement.
Staring at this finished, very quiet building.
Right. Staring at it, and you actually have to walk through the front doors, step inside, and just live in it.
Which is terrifying for most people.
It's utterly terrifying. We have become, so deeply addicted to the noise and the visible struggle of construction that the quiet reality of simply existing inside the building feels completely foreign. It feels like a void.
That terror is a very real psychological threshold. I mean, moving from the safety of constant visible preparation into the vulnerable reality of pure, unstructured existence. It requires an entirely different nervous system state.
And that profound transition is exactly where we find ourselves today. So welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
If you are listening to this, you have likely spent a significant amount of time in what the source material beautifully calls the foyer of understanding.
Such a great phrase.
It really is.
Yeah.
Today, we are looking specifically at chapters W and X of the text, which cover comprehensive comprehension, the dissolution of structure, and teaching architecture.
It's really heavy-hitting stuff.
The ultimate culmination of it all. You know, you've acquired the tools, you've learned the vocabulary of your own psychology.
You've built the frameworks.
You've erected the massive scaffolding of your life architecture. But today is about taking that scaffolding down.
Moving out of the foyer.
Yes, walking through those doors and finally stepping into the house of being.
You know, to really grasp the gravity of this shift, I think we need to look at how the text frames our entire evolutionary arc.
Oh, please do. Break that down for us.
It breaks our journey down into 3 really distinct phases of interaction with our own lives. And most people, in fact, the vast majority of society, they start and end their lives simply as the user.
The user, like with a piece of software.
Exactly like that. Think about how you interact with a new smartphone. A user just accepts the default settings.
Right, they aren't going into the developer mode.
No, they just click the shiny icons, they react to the push notifications, they just use what's handed to them.
They definitely aren't looking at the source code.
Not at all.
So, if an invisible legacy script starts running in their brain, let's say, an emotional defense mechanism that was literally written into their nervous system when they were a terrified 14-year-old.
Right, a trauma response.
Yeah, a trauma response.
Yeah.
They don't question it. They just let the script execute.
They lash out, or they completely shut down.
They run away. They are essentially like being lived by invisible systems they didn't consciously choose.
Being lived by invisible systems. That's the perfect way to phrase it.
It's a scary thought.
It is. But eventually, if you're lucky, or maybe if the pain of being a user just gets way too high, you have a realization.
You hit a wall.
Yeah, you hit a wall and you decide to become the architect.
Okay, the architect. This is the second phase.
Right. You open up the terminal. You start actually looking at the code.
You start mapping your childhood trauma.
Exactly. You track your habits. You read all the books. You build those intricate Notion templates for your daily routines.
Oh, man, the Notion templates. I know that phase intimately.
We all do. You erect the scaffolding. You completely redesign the interface of your life.
It's so intoxicating because you finally feel this incredible sense of control. But the text gives a massive warning here, doesn't it?
A huge warning.
Because we can get permanently stuck in the architect phase.
Oh, easy.
We can become so utterly obsessed with designing the perfect morning routine or optimizing our sleep score.
Analyzing our attachment styles for the 100th time.
Yes. Analyzing it all so much that we never actually get around to living our lives. We just manage them.
Right. The management literally becomes the avoidance.
Wow.
Which brings us to the final shift, the one we are really exploring today, moving from the architect to the participant.
The participant.
This is the exact moment you stop trying to forcefully conduct every single instrument in the orchestra of your life.
Like, you realize you don't need to micromanage the brass section.
And you don't need to glare at the strings. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just put down the baton, you step off the podium, and you simply let the music play through you.
You plug back into the vast interconnected network you were always designed for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But taking that scaffolding down is incredibly dangerous if the concrete hasn't actually dried.
Right. You can't just fake it.
No, you can't just declare yourself a participant and hope for the best.
The building will collapse.
It will. The text insists that before we dissolve the structure, we have to deeply understand what it means to actually finish a cycle of growth.
And this is where things get really counterintuitive, I think.
Very much so.
Because the text warns us that most people try to move into the building before the floors are even finished, because they get trapped by what it calls step 8.
Step 8. Yeah, this is formally defined in the text as temporal culmination.
Temporal culmination.
It is basically the graveyard of personal development.
The graveyard? Why? What is it?
Temporal culmination is simply the moment you achieve the specific measurable result you were aiming for.
Okay, so if you're listening on your commute right now, think about the last time you set a really massive goal.
Like losing weight.
Right, maybe you decided to lose 30 pounds or run a marathon or hit a specific revenue target in your business.
You grind for months and months.
You grind so hard, and then one Tuesday, you step on the scale or you cross that finish line, you hit the target.
That's step 8.
Okay. And what does the human brain typically do in that exact moment?
Well, it dumps a massive dose of dopamine. It throws a brief internal party.
Yeah.
And it immediately says, okay, we're done here. What's the next entirely separate mountain I need to climb?
They just check the box and completely abandon the process that got them there.
Precisely.
But wait, why is that a trap, though? I mean, in corporate culture, or even just modern hustle culture, hitting the goal and moving immediately to the next one, that's praised as high performance.
Oh, it's totally the standard operating procedure in our culture.
Right. So why is it bad?
It's a trap because if you stop at step 8, your growth is purely horizontal.
Horizontal.
You aren't spiraling upward.
Yep.
You are just moving sideways across the exact same floor of the building.
Oh, I see.
Think about the person who loses those 30 pounds through sheer white-knuckled willpower and some miserable restrictive diet.
Right. They hate every second of it.
But they hit the goal. But because they immediately stop, because they don't actually reflect on the underlying mechanics of how their identity shifted during that process.
They inevitably gain the weight back.
Every single time. And when they try to lose it a second time, they have to start completely from scratch.
That is so exhausting.
In fact, it's often harder the second time because their metabolic and psychological systems are just totally burned out.
They are running these endless horizontal loops, burning massive amounts of energy, but never elevating their baseline.
Ever elevating, that's exactly it.
So to actually take the stairs to the next floor, to spiral upward like you said, we have to push past the finish line.
We have to keep going.
The text says we must actively push through step 9 and step 10 to finally reach the pinnacle, which is step 11. But let's not just list these, you know? I really want to know the how. If I just cross the marathon finish line or I just hit my sales goal, how do I practically execute step 9?
Which the text calls defining the creation.
Right. How do I do that?
Well, defining the creation requires you to sit down, ideally within 48 hours of hitting the goal, before the memory starts to fade.
Okay, so there's a time limit.
Yeah, you want it fresh. And you conduct a rigorous internal autopsy of the win.
An autopsy of the win. I like that.
You aren't just celebrating the medal. You are meticulously documenting the machine that built the medal.
Wow. Okay, so what am I asking myself?
You ask things like, what specific daily rhythms actually move the needle here?
What habits actually worked?
Exactly. Which assumed constraints turned out to be total illusions. What parts of my old identity actually had to die for me to accomplish this?
You are codifying the invisible architecture of your success so you can, replicate it on demand later.
That's the key. Replicability.
It's kind of like saving your progress in a video game before moving to the next level.
That's a great analogy.
Because if you don't hit save, you lose all the XP. You have to start the level over.
You lose all of it.
And then that leads directly into step 10. Right. Recognizing new tensions.
Yes.
This one fascinated me because it completely reframes our idea of success. We usually think success brings peace.
We hope it does.
Right, we hope. But the text says achieving a goal immediately creates new, dangerous tensions.
Because growth always introduces instability. It has to.
Let's use the 30-pound weight loss example again.
All right.
How does step 10 look there?
Well, the step 10 tension isn't about the diet anymore. You figured that out.
Right.
The new tension might be that your old drinking buddies feel deeply insecure around your new lifestyle.
Oh, wow.
And so they start passive-aggressively sabotaging you.
Offering you drinks, making jokes.
Exactly. Or, let's say you get that big promotion at work. The new tension is that you are now managing your former peers.
Which is incredibly awkward.
It's a completely different dynamic. And if you don't actively anticipate those specific tensions at your new altitude,
the social gravity will just pull you right back down to step 1.
Your friends will drag you back to the bar, or you'll completely undermine your own authority at work just to stay liked.
You have to map the new friction.
You have to map it, which finally clears the path for the absolute apex of the cycle.
Step 11.
Step 11. Marked in the text by a very distinct star symbol.
Comprehensive comprehension.
Yes.
I mean, at step 11, we aren't talking about the specific goal anymore, are we?
No, we've zoomed way out.
We aren't asking what diet trick worked. We are asking this huge philosophical question.
Right. We're asking, what universal principle did this specific, isolated experience just teach me about the fundamental nature of transformation itself?
It's so meta.
It is. And the text breaks this down into 3 sequential levels of comprehension.
Okay, let's go through them.
This is the exact bridge from acquiring random data to possessing actual embodied wisdom. Level 1 is simply understanding the events. Exactly, the what. You just observe the raw data. Like, I practiced the piano for 20 minutes every morning for 90 days, and now I can play a Bach prelude.
Okay, basic observation. I did X, Y happened.
Right. Level 2 then moves slightly deeper into understanding the patterns.
The why.
The why. So you say, I learned the prelude specifically because I practiced in the morning when my cognitive focus was sharpest.
Oh, okay.
And I noticed I couldn't memorize the sheet music on days when I had really poor sleep.
So you are seeing the mechanics of cause and effect. You're mapping the specific variables.
You are. But level 3 is the quantum leap.
This is the universal architecture.
Yes. It is the ability to extract a principle from that piano bench that applies to literally everything in the cosmos.
Give me an example of that.
So, sitting at the piano, you suddenly realize, oh, all sustainable transformation requires the integration of complementary opposites.
Wow.
Deep, localized effort must be perfectly balanced by systemic restoration and sleep.
Okay, wait, hold on. I need to challenge this a little bit.
Go for it.
Because when I was reading this section, a giant red flag went up for me.
Really?
Because if I am doing this level 3 analysis every single time I do something basic, if I'm constantly analyzing the universal physics of effort and restoration every time I just go for a light jog,
right,
or I'm thinking about the universal chemistry of acid and fat every time I cook a simple dinner, doesn't that just kill the magic of being alive?
I see what you mean.
It sounds completely exhausting. It's like dissecting a butterfly to see how it flies. You understand it perfectly, sure, but you've killed the butterfly.
That's a fair concern.
Doesn't this level of hyper-awareness ruin the joy of the actual experience?
I completely understand that fear. It does sound like a recipe for a really neurotic, over-analytical life.
Exactly.
But the text argues, and actually modern neurobiology supports this, the exact opposite is true.
The opposite.
Yes. Level 3 comprehension doesn't kill the magic.
Yeah.
It is actually the only thing that frees you to experience the magic without anxiety.
How? Give me an analogy, because I'm struggling to see that.
Okay, let's use a modern one. Think about the difference between someone memorizing a list of cheat codes for a video game versus a programmer who actually understands the underlying physics engine of the game itself.
Oh, that's interesting.
The person with the cheat codes is incredibly rigid, right?
Yeah, they have to input up, down, exactly right.
In the exact right sequence, or absolutely nothing happens. They are stressed. They are constantly staring at their notes.
They're entirely dependent on the external structure.
Exactly. They're the amateur cook, terrified of deviating from the recipe by a single teaspoon.
Oh, that's me. That's definitely me in the kitchen.
Right. But the programmer, the master who understands the universal physics engine.
They don't need the cheat codes at all.
No, they understand how the digital gravity works, how the collision detection functions. Because they have achieved comprehensive comprehension, those rigid rules just dissolve.
They can effortlessly improvise.
Exactly. They can jump off a digital cliff and just invent a new move on the way down. The understanding reduces their cognitive load.
Because they aren't thinking about the rules.
Right. They are entirely present in the flow of the game. The structure completely falls away.
That is a brilliant distinction. The deep understanding doesn't add cognitive load. It actively removes it.
It frees up RAM in your brain.
Which leads us perfectly into the next major concept here, the dissolution of structure and embodied mastery.
Yes.
Because once you achieve that level 3 understanding, you truly don't need the scaffolding anymore.
You really don't.
The morning alarms, the habit trackers on your phone, the strict environmental rules, they naturally begin to just fall away.
They outlive their usefulness.
But before we look at what happens when that goes right, we have to look at the people who absolutely refuse to let the scaffolding go.
Yes.
And the text has a devastatingly accurate term for them.
Workshop junkies.
I felt very personally attacked by this section, I have to be honest.
I think we all did a little bit.
I think anyone who listens to deep dives like this one might wince a little reading that part.
Sure.
The text describes this incredibly common modern archetype. It's the person who is an absolute expert at auditing their own trauma.
They know all the jargon.
They have mapped out their exact Myers-Briggs type, their Enneagram, their attachment styles.
They know their astrological rising sign.
Exactly. They have memorized all the Huberman morning protocols. They have 50 intricately linked Notion databases tracking their macros and their mood every single hour. But when it comes to actually taking a real risk or having a difficult, vulnerable conversation or simply living their lives,
they're completely paralyzed.
they freeze. Why does that happen?
Because they have become professional students of their own existence. They have fundamentally mistaken preparation for action.
Ouch.
Right. They are so busy constantly reinforcing the scaffolding, buying new hard hats, polishing the metal supports, tightening every single bolt on those cranes.
That they never actually step inside the building.
Never. The structure, which was originally meant to just facilitate their growth, has mutated.
Mutated into what?
Into a highly sophisticated hiding place from the unpredictability of reality.
Wow.
They use therapy speak and optimization metrics as a literal defense mechanism against vulnerability.
It's the ultimate illusion of progress. I'm doing the work. I'm updating my spreadsheet.
But you're not actually living.
So how do we force ourselves to drop the clipboards and walk into the building?
Well, the text outlines a timeline for true mastery, breaking it into phases.
Right.
Years 1 through 3 are goal-oriented. Like, I want to achieve a 200-pound deadlift.
Simple enough.
Years 4 through 7 shift to being process-oriented.
Yeah.
I am a person who trains daily, regardless of the goal.
It becomes a habit.
But years 8 and beyond, this is mastery phase 3. This is what the text calls being orientation-oriented.
Orientation-oriented. What does that actually mean in practice?
It means the compartmentalization of your life completely collapses.
In a good way.
In a very good way. In phase 3, you no longer have an athletic practice over here in this neat little box, and a career over there in that box, and your marriage in a third box. Yeah. You stop viewing your life as a collection of siloed domains that require totally different personas.
The text uses this great example of a character named Marcus, right?
Yes, Marcus. He's in year 9 of his mastery.
And when he wakes up, he doesn't say, now I am doing my athletic development. He just goes to the gym and trains.
Right.
But while he is physically training, he is actively applying the concept of progressive overload, which is a weightlifting principle.
To a massive, complex corporate merger. He is negotiating later that exact same day.
That blew my mind.
And simultaneously, he is practicing a state of physical, grounded presence under the heavy barbell, knowing he will use that exact same physiological state to be more emotionally available to his toddler that evening.
Every single domain speaks to the others.
The universal principles just flow freely across all those artificial boundaries.
Because it's all the same physics engine.
Exactly. You realize that the biological necessity of rest and recovery applies just as much to an intense cognitive sprint at work as it does to tearing muscle fibers in the gym.
You stop consciously trying to, transfer skills.
Because the skills are no longer domain-specific tools you just pick up and put down. They are baked into your operating system.
Transformation is no longer a weekend project.
No, it is the continuous baseline state you just inhabit.
But right at this peak, the text delivers a massive warning about what happens when this integration process fails.
It's a very sobering section.
It has a section titled The Pattern Behind Every Collapse. It describes this diagram of bright lights that flare up brilliantly, burn fiercely for a few weeks or months,
and then quietly fade to absolutely nothing.
It's the person who loses the weight and gains it all back. It's the daily meditation practice that lasts 90 days and then completely vanishes.
We see it all the time.
Why do these lights keep fading? Why do we collapse?
The text details several failure modes, but 2 are deeply insidious. The first is premature scaffolding removal.
Premature removal.
This happens when you experience a major breakthrough. You feel incredible, you're confident, you're just riding this huge wave of dopamine.
Right, you feel invincible.
And in that hubris, you decide to tear down the environmental design that was actually supporting you before the new identity has become truly load-bearing.
It's the guy who has been crushing it at the gym for 4 months.
Yeah.
He feels great, so he decides, you know what, I don't need my accountability partner anymore.
Big mistake.
I don't need to lay my gym clothes out the night before. I've got this.
And within 3 weeks, he is back to eating chips on the couch.
Precisely. Because he removed the external support structures before the internal architecture had actually cured.
The concrete was still wet.
Yeah. What's the second failure mode?
The second major one is meaning erosion.
Meaning erosion.
This occurs when a transformation was built entirely on a foundation of extrinsic motivation.
Extrinsic, like external reward.
Right. Let's say you take up a grueling hobby, like ultramarathon running. But your primary unacknowledged driver is simply to impress your peer group, or maybe prove an ex-partner wrong.
Oh, running on pure spite.
Exactly. And for the first 9 months, that external validation, or that spite, provides massive fuel. It drives incredible discipline.
It doesn't last.
Eventually, your friends get used to the fact that you run. The novelty wears off. The applause completely stops.
And because you didn't have a deeply rooted intrinsic anchor, because you weren't doing it for the inherent joy or alignment of the act itself,
The whole structure just collapses.
you realize you were only performing for an audience.
And once the audience leaves the theater, the motivation evaporates. The meaning erodes.
It fades to black every single time.
Every time.
So this brings up a really vital, practical question.
Go ahead.
If premature scaffolding removal is so common and so dangerous, how do we actually know when it is safe to take the scaffolding down?
It's a tricky balance.
Is there a metric? How do we know we aren't removing it way too early?
Well, the text provides a very clear litmus test for this.
Oh, good.
You know, you've reached what it calls automatic integration, when skipping the new behavior feels like an actual violation of your identity.
A violation.
It feels physically, psychologically, and emotionally wrong to not do the thing.
Wow.
The internal resistance to doing the behavior drops to near zero. The text refers to this state mathematically as dimension 4, resistance dissolution.
Okay, I want to unpack the math here because the text introduces 2 formulas that honestly blew my mind.
The R1V and AV1 formulas.
Yes, it describes the shift from being R1V to becoming AV1. Let's translate this into plain English.
Let's do it.
If I understand this correctly, R1V basically means I am just a thermometer, right?
That's a perfect way to look at it.
Yeah.
R1V stands for responsive variable reacting to the 1.
Okay, what is the 1?
The 1 represents the constant, which in this state is the external world. The world is the solid thing, and you are the variable.
Okay, so the environment acts, the economy shifts, your boss gets angry, traffic backs up.
And you just react.
You get hot when the room gets hot, you get cold when the room gets cold.
You are entirely at the mercy of the external environment.
But AV1 is the total inversion of that, right?
Total inversion. You become the autonomous variable. You become the thermostat.
The thermostat.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're the 1. You're the constant, self-regulated center. And the external world becomes the shifting variable that you dictate your interaction with.
So when you reach automatic integration, you are permanently operating as AV1.
Exactly.
The transformation is no longer a fragile, exhausting project requiring immense willpower to maintain. It is simply your baseline operating system.
You dictate the temperature.
And that profound internal shift triggers a cascade effect that is much, much larger than you.
This is where it gets really beautiful.
Which leads us to the most fascinating part of these chapters, the frontal ripple or systems mastery.
Right. This is where the text completely shatters the illusion of separation.
We are so conditioned by Western individualism to think of personal development as something that happens entirely inside our own skin.
My growth, my journey, my mindset.
Exactly. But the text uses this incredible metaphor. You are not an isolated hard drive. You are a Wi-Fi router in a massive invisible mesh network.
You are constantly broadcasting. Everything you process internally broadcasts externally.
Everything.
Your mood, your subtle muscular tension, your baseline nervous system alignment, it propagates outward constantly.
Think about this in the context of your morning, right? If you wake up highly dysregulated, you read a stressful email, your heart rate spikes, and you rush out the door.
You're in pure survival mode.
Right. You stop for coffee and you snap impatiently at the barista.
Just a little short with them.
Yeah. You haven't just had a bad morning internally, you have actively altered the network.
You have transmitted that chaotic survival state frequency straight into the barista's nervous system.
And they might then feel a spike of anxiety, which causes them to mess up the next customer's order.
Who then takes that frustration to their office.
Exactly. If you run an unhealed survival pattern, you are unconsciously teaching that survival pattern to every single node in your network.
It's a huge responsibility. But the reverse is equally true and mathematically verifiable.
Okay, good. The positive side.
This is where the immense power of the AV1 framework lies. The text illustrates this with a scenario we have all survived at some point, the meeting room example.
Oh man, this was visceral to read.
So relatable.
Picture this, right? You are in a sterile corporate conference room. It's a high-stakes project meeting, and things are rapidly spiraling out of control.
A deadline was missed.
Yes, and the blame game has started. You can physically feel the air getting thick in the room.
People's voices are rising in pitch. Posture is getting really rigid.
Breathing is getting shallow. Every single nervous system in that room is escalating into fight-or-flight threat mode.
The collective field of the room is deeply toxically dysregulated.
Now, imagine one single person in that room who has deeply integrated their architecture.
They are operating firmly from that AV1 baseline.
Under this intense social and professional pressure, they remain genuinely grounded. And the text specifies a really crucial detail here. This is not performative calmness.
No, not at all. That's a huge distinction.
Right. They aren't crossing their arms, rolling their eyes, and using that condescending therapy voice to tell everyone to calm down.
Oh, that just makes people so much angrier.
It does. It's so patronizing.
Exactly. No, they are truly internally regulated. Their heart rate is actually steady.
They take a deep, diaphragmatic breath.
And instead of leaping into the defense or attacking someone else, they lean forward and ask a single clarifying question.
They name the tension in the room without amplifying it or judging it.
And the room shifts.
Just like that.
But it doesn't shift primarily because of the brilliant corporate strategy of their question.
Yeah.
No, it shifts because of neurobiology. Their deeply regulated nervous system offers a powerful alternative frequency to the room.
Because human nervous systems are literally designed to co-regulate.
Exactly. The collective field of the room unconsciously begins to entrain to that grounded pattern.
The panic breaks.
The dysregulation collapses and stability is restored. All because one single node in the network held its center.
I want to offer an analogy here that really helped me visualize this.
Please.
Imagine a room filled with dozens of tuning forks.
Okay.
If all those forks are vibrating at a harsh, screeching, dissonant frequency, you don't have to frantically run around the room grabbing every single fork trying to forcefully stop them from vibrating.
That'd be impossible.
Right. You just have to strike your own tuning fork with a clear, resonant, powerful intention.
Wow.
Because of the sheer physics of acoustic resonance, the other forks in the room will gradually, naturally begin to hum at that new, clear frequency.
That is a flawless analogy, truly.
You don't fix the room. You change your own pattern, you hold it relentlessly, and you trust the fractal nature of the network.
And the text actually formalizes this ripple effect into a mathematical concept it calls the linguistic mastery equation.
Ah, yes. The math again.
It proves why this resonance isn't just a nice metaphor, but an actual exponential law of growth.
Break the math down for us. What is the equation?
The equation states that mastery is not simple addition. It is the infinite accumulation of your transformation cycles, where each new cycle's value is multiplied by the cascaded amplification of all previous cycles.
Multiplied, not added.
Multiplied.
So 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. It's compound interest for human evolution.
Precisely. When you integrate a cycle of intense physical discipline, say, learning to regulate your breathing during ice baths.
Okay, popular one right now.
That skill doesn't just sit in a silo next to your career skills. It multiplies them. The physiological resilience you built in the ice suddenly amplifies your cognitive endurance during a grueling 6-hour contract negotiation.
You stay calm under pressure.
Right. And as you complete more and more of these cycles, the speed at which you learn and transform accelerates exponentially.
It gets faster.
The text notes that by your 5th major cycle of transformation, you can complete the entire process in a quarter of the original time.
A quarter of the time? That's insane.
Why? Because you aren't just learning a new skill anymore. You have mastered the meta pattern of transformation itself. You actually know how to learn.
Which means the resonance of your tuning fork is getting stronger, louder, and reaching further with every single cycle you complete.
It reverberates further out into the network.
And that massive exponential growth inevitably leads us to the final major theme of our deep dive: teaching architectures and designing containers.
Yes, the natural evolution.
Because when your mastery starts naturally rippling outward like a shockwave, people are going to notice.
They can't help but notice.
They're going to feel that resonance. Your friends, your kids, your coworkers, they are inevitably going to pull you aside and ask, how did you do it?
How did you stay so calm in that meeting? How do you have this kind of clarity?
Right. And suddenly, whether you wanted it or not, you find yourself transitioning from the student to the teacher.
You become the architect of spaces for others to transform.
But this transition is fraught with peril.
Oh, incredibly fraught.
How do we actually facilitate transformation in someone else?
Well, the text is aggressively clear on what does not work.
Let's start there. What doesn't work?
Transformation is never transferred through instruction manuals. It is not transferred through giving someone unsolicited advice or sending them a 10-step motivational checklist.
Or buying them a self-help book for their birthday.
The worst.
You can't just hand someone a PDF of your life's code and say, here, install this patch and you'll be fixed.
Because the information isn't the transformation.
The information isn't the transformation. That's powerful.
Transformation is transferred through resonance and through the deliberate, careful design of what the text calls containers.
Containers.
Facilitation isn't about lecturing. It becomes an act of architecture. You are building a psychological and emotional space where someone else's transformation actually becomes possible.
And the source material gives us a highly specific 4-part blueprint for building these containers.
It does. It's brilliant.
Let's unpack these because, frankly, this is the ultimate manual for effective leadership, for parenting, for deep friendship.
Really any dynamic where you are responsible for helping another human being grow.
Exactly. So element number 1 is safety without stagnation.
Right. This is the delicate Goldilocks zone.
The Goldilocks zone. Not too hot, not too cold.
If a container, say a classroom or a corporate team, is too harsh, too critical, or too punishing of failure, what happens?
People shut down.
The person's nervous system will immediately jump into threat mode. The amygdala fires, the prefrontal cortex goes totally offline, and learning shuts down completely.
It will just perform compliance to survive.
Exactly.
Sure.
But conversely, if the container is too safe, too coddling, or completely devoid of any friction and consequence, the person will stagnate.
There is no biological or psychological impetus for growth.
Right. The architect must design a space that feels deeply safe enough to allow for terrifying vulnerability, but challenged enough to actually demand evolution.
It's exactly like a greenhouse.
Oh, I like that.
The glass walls protect the young plants from the freezing wind and the predators, but it still forces them to fight gravity and reach for the sun. It doesn't grow the plant for them.
That's a perfect image for it.
Okay, element number 2, structure with flexibility.
Think back to the scaffolding we started with. As a facilitator, a parent, or a boss, you have to provide clear frameworks.
Right.
People need to know what to expect, what the boundaries are, and where to focus their attention. But if that structure is too rigid...
If it demands exact replication of your specific path?
Exactly. It crushes the organic, messy reality of human growth. A great container is like a jazz framework.
A jazz framework.
The time signature and the chord progression are set. That's the structure. But the solos, the actual expression of the music...
that has to emerge organically from the individual playing it.
You hold the frame firmly, but allow the unique content to fill it.
I love that. Element number 3 is perhaps my favorite concept in the entire text.
It's a tough one.
And maybe the hardest one to actually execute in modern society. Witnessing without interpretation.
This is a rare and incredibly powerful psychological medicine.
So rare.
Most people go through their entire lives without ever once experiencing this.
That breaks my heart a little, but it's true.
Usually when we share something deeply vulnerable or painful with a friend or a partner, the listener's anxiety naturally spikes.
Because seeing someone in pain is uncomfortable.
Right. And to manage their own anxiety, they immediately jump in to analyze the pain, fix it, explain it away, or offer unprompted advice.
Oh, you're feeling depressed? Have you tried drinking more water?
Right.
Have you tried getting morning sunlight? Here's my armchair psychology theory on why your relationship with your mother caused this specific emotional reaction.
We interpret and we advise as a defense mechanism to protect ourselves from the extreme discomfort of just sitting in their unresolved pain.
Wow. We fix them to soothe ourselves.
Exactly. But witnessing without interpretation means stripping all of that away.
Just being there.
It means creating a sacred opportunity for people to be truly seen fully and completely, without judgment, without analysis, and without the suffocating pressure to be fixed.
Just holding the eye contact, holding the space, and effectively communicating. I see you.
Your experience is valid. I am not afraid of your darkness, and I don't need to change it.
That level of profound acceptance alone can catalyze massive, spontaneous transformation.
It gives them the space to heal themselves. It's profound.
And finally, element number 4, integration time.
Right. Transformation is not a constant, relentless upward grind. Biology just doesn't work that way.
Thank goodness.
It requires a pulse, a rhythm. The text describes this necessary rhythm as engage, retreat, integrate, engage.
Engage, retreat, integrate, engage.
You cannot constantly bombard a human system with new emotional breakthroughs, new information, or new challenges.
The system will break.
There must be designated, heavily protected time for the nervous system to literally rewire itself, process the trauma, and embed the new patterns.
If you force continuous engagement without integration, the system will overload, fry, and collapse.
Absolutely.
Now, I have to step in and push back here.
Okay.
On behalf of anyone listening who is a teacher, a middle manager, a therapist, or just a parent of 3 kids,
Fair enough.
reading these 4 elements, it sounds utterly exhausting.
It does take a lot of energy.
Constantly holding the frame, constantly calibrating this delicate Goldilocks zone of safety, witnessing intense pain without ever judging it, managing the biological rhythms of a team.
It's a heavy lift.
How does the architect avoid complete and total burnout? If we are constantly acting as this resonant tuning fork, giving all this regulating energy away, don't our batteries eventually run dry?
The text anticipates this exact reality, and it provides a very stark, uncompromising warning.
What does it say?
It says, the system that maintains itself can serve indefinitely. The one that depletes itself serves briefly, then collapses.
Wow.
True wisdom requires that the facilitator must actively receive and metabolize just as much energy as they give out. You cannot pour from an empty vessel.
But practically, how do they do that? When you're the leader, everyone is looking at you.
You survive through a structural mechanism the text calls the inversion kick.
The inversion kick.
This is the deliberate, scheduled practice of alternating your position in the hierarchy of growth.
Alternating your position.
You cannot always be the delineator, the one holding the context, providing the firm structure, and designing the space for others.
Right.
To survive, you must regularly invert the dynamic and become the iterator.
The iterator.
The one immersed in the content, the one being guided, the one receiving the facilitation and having your own blind spots pointed out.
Oh, the dynamic has to flip.
It has to.
So the master therapist has to go sit on someone else's couch and be the patient.
Yes.
The CEO has to go to a retreat where they are just a student taking notes. The mentor desperately needs their own mentor.
Without exception. Give, receive, metabolize, give, facilitate, be facilitated. Reflect, facilitate.
It is a breathing process.
If you do not practice the inversion kick, you will inevitably develop cognitive tunnel vision. Your empathy will calcify, your resonance will dry up, and your beautiful container will become brittle and completely break.
But if you maintain the rhythm of the inversion kick, you can serve the infinite game indefinitely.
The infinite game.
The infinite game. That perfectly brings us to our final thoughts and the ultimate legacy of this entire deep dive.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
We started this journey looking at very granular things. Frameworks, operational flows, equations for self-improvement. We looked at the scaffolding.
We did.
But look at where this trajectory inevitably leads. The text makes this incredibly poignant, sweeping statement about the ultimate purpose of doing this hard work.
It really zooms out at the end.
It says, generations from now, someone you will never ever meet will benefit profoundly from the internal transformation you chose to integrate today.
Because of the fractal ripple. Because the network never forgets a frequency.
Exactly. Because you did the painful work to deeply regulate your nervous system, you were able to hold a grounded, safe container for a colleague during a massive crisis.
Right.
That colleague subconsciously absorbed your AV1 template, and they used it to navigate a volatile conflict with their spouse.
Which saves the marriage.
And that saved marriage changed the emotional environment in which they raised their child. And that child carries your integrated pattern of peace into a completely new community, decades from now.
Personal evolution is cultural evolution.
You don't have to trace the cascade to know it is happening. You just have to strike the tuning fork.
And this brings us to the final pivot of the text. The realization that you have done the work.
You have built the vessel.
You have erected the 4 load-bearing walls of your character. You have painstakingly tuned the instrument of your own body and mind.
Yes.
And now, the absolute highest level of mastery is stepping down from the conductor's podium. It is shifting fully, finally, into participant mode.
Participant mode.
You stop trying to violently force the universe to conform to your rigid architect-level plans. And you simply allow your integrated architecture to interact playfully and organically with the messy reality right in front of you.
It's terrifying to let go of the control, but it's the ultimate freedom. You trust the structure you've built so deeply that you essentially just forget about it.
You just live in the house.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the architecture of meaning, we want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to carry with you.
Something to really chew on.
It comes from the very last page of the source material, a poetic concept known as the threshold song.
The text asks us to look deeply at the nature of thresholds, the obstacles, the blockages, and the boundaries we perceive in our daily lives.
It reminds us of a simple physical reality. A door does not just float in empty space.
No, a door is held by a frame.
The frame is held by the walls of a room.
The room is held by the foundation of a house.
The house is held by the gravity of the earth.
The earth is held by the orbital mechanics of the solar system.
Every single threshold you face is nested within an infinitely larger architecture that is silently holding it in place.
And so the ultimate question the text poses to you is this: who holds the holder?
What is the invisible, nested architecture holding your current reality in place right now?
What is the deeper, unexamined structure anchoring your anxieties, your ambitions, and your perceived obstacles?
You don't transform your life by constantly banging your bloody fists against the closed door. You transform your life by following the holding to its source.
Because when you finally understand what is holding the room, the door naturally opens on its own.
So as you go back into your life, your commute, your family today, look past the scaffolding.
Look past it.
Look past the immediate door blocking your path. Ask yourself, who holds the holder? Follow the holding all the way down to its source and see what incredible things open up for you.